Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
This is the Dragon's Lair, in association with the Riverside Sports Bar Newport, an American-style bar with a proper Welsh feel.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon's Lair podcast in association with Riverside Sports Bar. I'm Jamie. I hope you're all doing well. Now, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, Gavin can't be with us this week, but thankfully I'm not alone. I'm pleased to be joined by the co-host of the Italian rugby podcast, Fratelli to Rugby, Mike Petretta. Mike, welcome to the pod. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you for joining us. So let's talk about what happened Saturday. Let's get straight into it. Saturday night, so Dragons hosted Benetton at Ronnie Parade, and it was the visitors who came out on top, winning 31-21. Benetton, who featured 12 internationals in their starting 15, would have been 13 if Ferrari hadn't pulled out, but they had 12 internationals in their starting 15. They muscled their way to a comprehensive 4-try victory in Newport. So, Mike, job done for Benetton. What was your thoughts on that from a Benetton perspective on that game Saturday?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives that we can take from particularly even the bad parts of the game. So even when things weren't working, we had Avaka, like you mentioned right at the start, who came in short notice. I think that was his second or third game, URC game. He's been sort of sat on by Benetton for a while, waiting for him to be ready. And obviously he did really, really well at the scrum, even aside from the try. Yeah, I think there was lots of stuff to still work on for us though. Line out awry. You can tell with the stand down from the players, the 3 game stand down at the start of the season and the international slowly coming in now. There's some rust. But yeah, I think if now they can shake it into sort of, post the European games, and obviously there's going to be some really interesting matches with Zebra and moving forward, I think it. Hopefully, we've turned the ugly part of the early season. So fingers crossed.
And it was a game of two halves. I know it's a cliche saying that, but it really was. I thought Dragons were really good in that first half, particularly the first 30 minutes. We were physical, we were direct, we created opportunities, we didn't take them. I think there was 2 key moments. So we spoke before we came on here, didn't we, about Dragons and Zebra being very similar. Is that we don't win the key moments. That's what lets us down. So there was that overthrow from Benetton's replacement hooker. I think it was Manfredi, wasn't there? The ball spread wide. Jared Rosser, great breakdown on the left, throws the ball, gets intercepted by Fekatoa. That was a missed opportunity. And then there was that wonderful line break from Rio Dyer, who I thought had a really good game. I think that was Rio's best game this season so far.
I think he's such a talent. Like, aside from obviously the obvious stuff that he does, it's what he does off the ball as well, and like his positioning, like in the backfield for cover kicks. He's just becoming a really complete winger, which is really good to see. So bodes well for the international series.
Yeah, and he still doesn't get the credit he deserves from a lot of fans in Wales, because he's not scoring tries week in, week out, but it's the work he does off the ball, his kick chase, and he really does work his socks off, Rio. But he made that break, didn't he? And like we're on here, goes to Lloyd Evans, and then Lloyd Evans just throws this wild pass behind the support runners, and I just couldn't understand why he threw that pass. But those 2 botched opportunities, it was definitely on, and it was botched. Now, if Dragons score those 2 tries, Mike, we could be looking at a very different game, couldn't we?
Agreed.
What did you make of that first half then? Was you a little bit concerned?
I honestly, of course. There was some really good like line speed coming. For me, it was always the question of if you can weather the storm. I felt like our bench just sheer sort of like Benetton are obviously the second most expensive salary cap team. So like it's not. I don't think it's arrogant for me to say. I think we've got pretty decent squad now. So I think it's one of those where I think if we could weather the storm and not sort of concede, that's where we're definitely stronger the second, the back quarter of the second half, unless obviously we're playing teams of equal or more powerful measure. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those. But yeah, 100%. Of course, I was worried. It would be saying a disservice of if I wasn't. There was particularly, the pendulum swang in both directions constantly with regards to obviously who was on top. And yeah, your defense was amazing. There was some really interesting plays from you guys. I felt like when you guys played off nine a lot, and obviously
Yeah.
you didn't get much change out of that. But when you went wide, and there was always we spoke, like I said briefly before we came on, it was always that last pass when you go
Yeah.
wide, the centers
Mhm.
fixed our centers, and then it was just one on one on the winger. And if that had gone to hand, like you sort of back Rio Dyer with a yard of space and a second of time to to make some yards.
Yeah.
So it was just some decision making.
No, I couldn't agree more. The second half was a very different story. I felt that we needed to come out the break strong because I thought
Yeah.
we were the better team in the first half, and I felt
Yeah.
good about what happened in that first four. Even though we botched opportunities, I thought, well, we just need to start strong, carry on doing what we're doing, and it's going to stick. Let's be honest, that second half, it was all Benetton. It was the power, I think. We were dominated by your power game. The scrum, well, completely dominated. I think it's fair to say Leon Brown did have a torrid time, and I love Leon, but he did struggle at the scrum. And it was the power game, wasn't it, Mike, that really got Benetton back into the game and back into control, I'd say, would you?
Yeah, I think that's fair assessment. I think anyone who knows sort of Bortolami's style, he's very anglicised from his time
Mm.
in Gloucester. So, very set piece heavy line, loves his line outs, loves his attacking mauls. And actually that's one area of the game I was really happy to see has improved, because traditionally, like both defensive and offensive maul, the Italian team struggle. Surely, due to size, but it seems like, we're starting to get sort of the setup quicker and more
Yeah.
effective. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that we played a little bit more sort of, like you said, forward heavy game.
Mm.
And yeah, it was definitely probably sort of the fatigue setting in the second half more than anything, because it was, like you said, a really physical first half.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And your bench made a big difference. So this is a Dragons problem now that's happened in the last four games. When we beat the Ospreys, our bench made a massive difference, and I'd say probably won us the game. The last four games now we've played, our bench have made zero impact. It's just not happening. For whatever reason. Could be lack of quality, lack of depth, I don't know. But our bench is not making an impact. But when you guys can bring on like Fekito and all these brilliant players, I mean,
Yeah.
they are, the depth at Benetton now, it's so improved from previous years, Mike, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, even last night we had Aminu, we had Genovese,
Mm,
we had Manfredi, who aren't sort of household names per se, but if you guys have been following the under 20s,
yeah,
Genovese was instrumental against Finn Baxter in that under 20s win in the Six Nations a few years back, and Aminu obviously against South Africa in the World Cup 2 years ago was demolishing the scrum. So we're slowly starting to focus a little bit more on that forward heavy game. And I'm sure we'll come on to Zebra a little bit later, but
yeah,
Brunello really focused on that and was really set piece heavy. And that's why actually when you're looking at who has gotten the line shares of the forwards in recent years, it has actually been Benetton, and it's probably because we're trying to sort of develop that game. Because again, traditionally, if you look at Fischetti, obviously great in the loose, but in sort of more closed environments in the scrum and at set
mm,
piece and line out and maul, etc., like you need size and you need technique. And um, definitely felt like we focused that on the second half. Like it was very much, forward heavy, playing off nine a lot, trying to sort of retain the ball
yeah.
multi-phase. There was a couple of wide opportunities, but again, I think it was just more like let's take minutes out of Dragon's legs, and then let's see sort of how it turns out.
Yeah, they managed the second half really well. The quality shone through. And I got no complaints about the result, Mike. I think Benetton were the better team. This game was a shot to nothing for us. We've got a big injury list. Benetton have got a much bigger budget and much more quality than we have. That's the question for you, actually, Mike. So
Yeah,
what is the budget, roughly, do you know, of Benetton and Zebra? Because the Welsh teams are operating on 4.5, which is really measly. We are working with the union to try and get that increase. But Benetton,
yeah.
they have got a pretty sizable budget, haven't they? For those who may not know, what's the budget estimate roughly?
And obviously I don't want to talk out of turn, but I believe around about 12 million, I think. That might
Yeah,
be operational instead of just salary. But if Leinster's 16, I know it's the second highest in the URC. But yeah, without I wouldn't want to be quoted on it, but I would say probably around about 12 million, I think.
yeah, it's quite
And
takeable.
in comparison, I think Zebra's salary budget is closer to three. I think it's the lowest in URC. So when you're comparing, it's apples
Okay.
and oranges, sadly.
Because I've seen a few Welsh fans saying Seabrook got higher budget than the Welsh regions, but you're
No,
saying that's not the
that's
case then, no?
100% not true.
Hmm.
100% not
Okay.
true. If you consider there's no marquee players, all of them are under 20s graduates. Um, yeah, like there's Paella came in as a Tongan international. He won't be on, ridiculous money. Gregory came from you know, Super Rugby I think he was 20 years old or 19 when he came over to Seabrook. Like there's not really many foreign sort of expensive players. They're all just under 20 graduates, all on
Yeah.
academy contracts probably, or recently graduated from that.
Yeah, because I heard Richard Hodges in an interview was saying that it's basically a development team now,
It is.
Zebra. The Italian Rugby Union are using Zebra as this development team, so that's correct then.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of parallels between Connacht of old and Zebra that you can probably take.
Mm.
Obviously, the federation are focusing on Italian qualified players for obvious reasons. We've only got two.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see sort of how those boys develop.
So Benetton have been on a very interesting journey, haven't they, mate? Because I can remember a few years ago, it wasn't that long ago actually. Like Benetton were pretty hopeless, weren't they? They were struggling to be competitive. It was only 4 years ago, I think, where they didn't win a single game in the league. And then after that, they won the Rainbow Cup, and the rest is history. So it is a remarkable journey because now I just see Benetton as a legitimate top 8 team. I mean, it has been some turnaround, isn't it, for Benetton?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think a lot of that also comes from the domestic increase of talent. So for those of you guys who are interested and don't know, when Conor O'Shea was in charge of Italy, he obviously set up a pathway with Stephen Aboud,
Mm,
and they really focused on developing sort of local talent. And actually, what actually has happened over the years is we've provided quite an elite number of players at under 20 level, and only a few have actually transitioned
yeah,
to into the franchises. The rest have gone into the domestic league, and obviously that's slowly improving the quality of the domestic league in general. Um, but a lot of the players that we're seeing from Benetton, obviously, of course, there's money makes a massive difference. Like that, everyone knows that.
yeah,
And there's been a massive amount of investment from Benetton. But what we're seeing now is actually the consequence of previous actions, as opposed to just they've thrown money at it. And it's great bringing players in like Fekatoa, but
yeah.
and I don't think it's disrespectful to say, I think our first choice are Brex and Menoncello, which are
Of
you know
course, yeah.
players from Benetton, from
Mm,
Treviso. Brex obviously before he came to Italy, he wasn't quite the player he is now. So that
mm.
development has come in house, and yeah, like I said, I think it's pretty plain for everyone to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what Chris Kerwin wrote in his article for the South Wales Argus today. He wrote an opinion piece on the game, and he wrote this. There is still a sense when an Italian team comes to town that it's a real chance for the Dragons, and it's time to change our mindset. Benetton mean business and deserve to be treated with the respect of a Leinster, Munster, Glasgow Bulls and Stormers. It's spot on. I still don't feel Benetton get the same, amount of credit as what they should. Do you think that's true, Mike? Or
Well, obviously I've done a few predictions with other podcasts, and Benetton never come up as even a
no?
dark horse, to be fair. Um, and it's sort of up to the boys to change that and sort of demand the respect. And I think yesterday you can see sort of how much it meant to them, that game, and it's
Yeah.
more than that. Benetton can win at home. We know that it's
Mm.
winning away. So I think today, yesterday's game, excuse me, is probably a fair reflection of like the direction they want to take. But I still think there's work that needs to be done. That said, I think they'd be disappointed if they don't make the playoffs this year. And I
Yeah.
know that's a tall order because there's a lot of players, a lot of teams playing really, really well at the moment.
Benetton seem to be a lot of people's second favorite team, don't they, Mike? You see on social media there was the Benetton bandwagon bus and all this sort of stuff. Why do you think that is? Why do you think so many people like Benetton?
I think people love an underdog, don't they? And they were
Yeah,
always the underdog team. And I think the rugby community innately want, teams to improve and do better. And, that's part of growing the game. And I think a lot of people might have a bit of a soft spot for Italian rugby just because, there's players who have capped the country like 100 times and lost like 90 of them, and we're, if nothing else, we're a team that is resilient and a team of triers. So
yeah,
I think it's one of those where, people want innately Italian rugby to improve for obvious reasons, from the Six Nations, and that will bleed into all Six Nations sort of ledgers if the Italian teams are more competitive. So yeah, I think there's probably an element of that if I had to hazard a guess, but
mm,
yeah, it's not obviously too dissimilar to how they play from an Anglo standpoint. So maybe they see it as a bit of an English team. I don't know.
mm. And what have you made of Zebra then this season, Mike? So I watched our game yesterday against the Lions. I mean, first of all, horrendous conditions,
Yeah,
absolutely horrendous conditions in Parma.
yeah,
They were very unlucky.
yeah,
They came very, very close. And I can see a lot of progress in Zebra. And it's kind of like Dragons, where you can see the progress, but we're not winning games. There's those key moments. But we
yeah.
talked about before we came on there, we're just not nailing those key moments. So we need to look out for Zebra, don't we? Because I can see an improvement. I think a lot of people can, even if that's not necessarily reflected in results.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And actually, at the start of the season, I said Zebra, without an ounce of irony, I think Zebra could probably finish 12th. And
That's a big
had
call,
they won
Mike. That's a
yesterday,
really big call.
yeah, had they won yesterday, that would have been
Oh
two
yeah,
massive scalps with Munster and then Lions,
yeah.
and there were five, a kick 5 meters away from winning. But yeah, I think they're one of those teams where you can see sort of last year there were sort of some really tough results for them,
Mm,
similar to yesterday, really, where like they dominated large proportions of the game, and like you said, a stupid mistake or like an intercept try or very opportunistic stuff, and all of a sudden it's they're in a bad position. Um, but I think the players have had an extra season. A lot of them are under 20 graduates. A lot of them are coming into their second season of URC level rugby, and it's adapt or die in this league, and you can see him starting to adapt, and there's some sort of really fantastic players coming through, obviously a few that we've spoken to personally, which aren't shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. People like Lorenzo Bani, we were saying it for years
yeah,
that he's going to be a talented player. Obviously, hopefully he comes back the same player from injury, and Trulla, he's starting to come of age, albeit he's a feisty man, needs to rein it back. Full score, obviously, is playing some of his best rugby. So it's not, again, it's not anything that comes out of you know just a casual performance. It's stuff that's been worked on really hard in the background for a number of years, and um, it's just that, like you said, it's that last pass, last bit
mm.
of quality which is missing, and that'll come with experience, decision making.
Yeah. That Munster win, mind. They played bloody good rugby. That wasn't a one-off, lucky fluke. Or Munster were
Yeah,
terrible. Zebra were brilliant. The rugby they play, the lovely brand. When they get going, mate, they are a joy to watch, aren't they? Especially from an attacking point of view. You know.
yeah. One thing that I found really exciting about yesterday when you're comparing it to Munster, obviously conditions were perfect, right? Absolutely perfect. And like you
Yeah.
said, torrential rain yesterday,
Mm,
sorry, day before yesterday, and it was
yeah.
possibly one of the worst conditions you could play in Italy. But they played the conditions, and I'm fortunate enough to have a conversation with Cece after the game, and he was like, "Yep, that was the plan. Like we wanted to play the conditions as opposed to the opponent." And Lions
Yeah.
obviously can't play wide if we're playing good kicking, territorial based games, and it almost pulled off. So it's nice to see that they can play more than just expansive attacking rugby. If the conditions don't allow that, they're looking at the plan B, and it's nice to see that it's starting to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Ultimate Nationals, they're just around the corner.
Yep.
Italy have named a 34-man squad. What are your takeaways or talking points from the squad, Mike? Anything that stood out to you?
Yeah. I mean, Alan coming back in, really nice surprise.
Yeah.
There was some reports in Italy that Quesada had closed sort of the door on his return. Bertaccini coming in, obviously that guy is a real talent. Surprised as well with regards to maybe, Paulo Dogwu not coming in. Obviously, I understand he's just come back from major injury.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just, trying to keep him healthy for the Six Nations. Full score coming back in, no Varney. Varney obviously has just announced that he's gone to Vans from Gloucester, so he's now going to be playing rugby because obviously he hasn't had a minute of game time this season. Yeah, I mean a lot to be excited about, I think, with the upcoming games. And obviously we haven't made it easy for ourselves this autumn international with our opponents. We have Argentina, New Zealand, and Georgia. But I don't know. There's part of me that wants to believe that we can cause an upset, at least with one of the two games. And obviously we need to see off the Georgian threat, I think.
Yeah. Remember that was being billed before as the Six Nations playoff and all
That's
that
always the
nonsense.
way.
I found that so frustrating and really disrespectful to Italy, you know.
Yeah.
What did you make of all that stuff, Mike? With Georgia just coming in and the idea of them just coming into Six Nations being replaced ahead of Italy. Did it annoy you as it did me?
Oh, it's so taxing for me. And
Yeah,
also because obviously we're at the forefront of it and we see it all the time. And listen, I understand. I am a massive advocate of growing the game, but I think
yeah,
it shouldn't be at the expense of another country. And actually, if any of the Six Nations, Wales included, were to be relegated, that you can effectively just bankrupt the union and just be done with it then, because it's
absolutely. Yeah,
unfortunately there's nothing we can do with no money coming in for a year.
no,
So um there should be sort of a provision in place potentially to grow the game. I'm more than happy with that, but it shouldn't be at the expense of another federation. I just find that so retrograde. Like what we're doing there is just cutting off our nose at that point. But yeah, it was tough time. It was dark time. Like the people who
yeah,
had to live with it are the Italian fans. It's a long period of not winning, but I definitely feel like tides have changed. And again, we're reaping the rewards from seeds sown in 2017 by Conor O'Shea and co. And under 20s look good. Who knows what can happen in the next few years?
I mean, I'm looking at your squad now, and the quality, compared to recent years, you got Lamaro in there, you got Negri, and then you got Montiaione, Louis Liner, Brex, Menoncello, Gabi C. It's Tomaso
Capuozzo,
Allen. It's
yeah,
just,
yeah,
it's just,
yeah,
it looks like a really, really good squad now. Times have changed, isn't it? This Italy squad
yeah.
now. Before we used to think, oh, wooden spoon every Six Nations. Now I don't think so because look at Wales. It was us last year and we're struggling. So
Yeah, but
the
Wales is always
expectations are
Wales,
going
though.
up.
Yeah. But like Wales is always Wales. That's that,
What
and
does that mean, mate? Wales is
so
always Wales.
so I we have like a joke in our podcast chat, which is when we're facing Leinster, like it doesn't matter realistically about
Mm,
who they put out in front of you. It doesn't matter about like if it's a second rate team or a third rate team. Leinster is always Leinster, and
of
Wales
course, yeah.
Wales is always Wales. Like you guys are gritty. You find a way to win. Like I think even if you go back to 2015, and obviously I know you can say, oh, there's not many players, if any, left from that team, but it's in there, and it's like being having the ability where everything has gone wrong in like that 2015 game against England is what I'm referencing, and
Absolutely,
you
yeah.
just find a way to win, and that sort of personifies you guys as a nation. So it's all good saying, looking at Wales, Wales is always Wales. So for me, I think one thing I find really interesting with the Italian team, like you said, there's some really great players, and some which are probably understated. Riccioni at Saracens, very good player. Ferrari, like when he's playing, he's a real set. Like even just looking at the props, which has been an area of weakness for us for a long time, like we've really turned a corner as well.
So Italy are playing Argentina, Georgia, and New Zealand, as
Yeah.
you mentioned there. realistically, then, how many wins do you think Italy can get out of those?
Minimum of one, but I think if we really want to show the world what we can do,
Mm,
Casada against Contaponi, like there's already some like storylines that you can dissect and sort of go into. I would love for us to, you know what, I would love for us to beat Argentina, but I would really love for us to be very competitive against New Zealand after the fiasco of the World Cup. Like
yes.
that for me is growth. If we can show to the world, because frankly it was embarrassing, right? Like, and it was a tough, again, dark times for an Italian
Yeah.
supporter. We can prove that we're competitive against New Zealand. Um,
Mm.
I that could potentially be a win for me, as in like that as a personal win. If we win, even better.
Yeah. So this be the first meeting then after that World Cup match?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was really
yeah,
painful and hard to watch. Actually, I felt
yeah,
very uncomfortable watching that. What was your
yeah.
view then, Mike, at the time watching that?
Just
Yeah.
heartbreaking as well. Like, obviously, we had Crowley on the pod as well, and
Oh,
we
right.
love
Yeah.
his mantra. We love the way he plays, and
Yeah.
I just think if we almost went into that thinking, oh, we've always got the game against France, right? Like, as in,
Yeah.
it's sort of like a throwaway game, and that's not the right mentality to have in sport, and it's not the right mentality to have in rugby. Like, you should go in with, the intention of winning every game. And I feel like after, they ran in 21 points in like the first 11 minutes or whatever it was, we
Yeah.
just sort of gave up. And that's not the mentality that you need to have to be a test level rugby team. So you sort of I sort of give them a pass because, again, like, average age is like 23 at that World Cup.
Yeah.
We're 2 years on, and a lot of players are coming of age. Capuato's playing some of his best rugby as well. Who knows what happens? Mencello wasn't there for that World Cup as well, and
Oh, right.
he's
Okay.
he's a
Yeah.
defensive leader. So
Mm.
yeah, who knows, mate? Who knows? It could be a very different game.
I'm really looking forward to Italy versus Argentina. I think that's going to be a cracking game from a neutral point of view.
Yeah,
And yeah, the Georgia, there will be that narrative as we've already talked about. That'll be interesting. And New Zealand, we keep hearing about the over has gone from New Zealand. We heard that so many times, they've lost to over. I generally think it might be true, actually. I don't think they're still a good team, don't get me wrong. I don't think they're as strong as what they used to be. And I don't think Italy have anything to fear, do they?
no, I think you're absolutely right. They're not as strong as they used to be. That
Mm,
said, Razor's a good coach. He had a few games to get settled in,
yeah,
and they still just have, an abundance of talent. So although the team that we've seen hasn't performed at probably the level that they can perform, they're going in after a championship. They've played multiple games together against some of the best teams in the world, and it's going to be a challenge. And I think sort of anyone who sort of start saying with the almost like the premise of they're not as good as they used to be. I think if we go in with that mentality, like, that, you could
yeah.
potentially get really hurt. And I think the first game against England is going to be a really interesting conversation, because I think a lot of the players, coaches, fans probably are going to go in with that mentality, and I think obviously they can probably get caught with their pants down if they think like that.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Autumn Nation series. It's going to be
Me neither.
very, very interesting. Um, Thank you for joining me, Mike. It's been a pleasure. Before you go, though, do you want to tell us about your Italian rugby podcast for our listeners who may not be aware of it? This is your chance to plug your pod now, so
Thank
go
you
ahead
so
and plug
much.
it.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, I would love to. So we have an English speaking Italian rugby podcast. We do a few lives every Monday. And yeah, just sort of go over a little bit about what's gone on. Not necessarily just focused on Italian rugby as well, just very heavily URC focused.
Yeah.
Some stuff about the Premiership, and following some of the players abroad as well. But yeah, we have interviews with coaches, national team coaches. We had Dave Ceci on a couple of weeks back as well. So it's just anyone who's interested in Italian rugby, even if it's just a glance, might be for you. And yeah, I'd love for you guys to have a listen. So Thank you very much for letting me plug that.
No problem. No, it's a very good podcast. I've listened to it. It's really, really good. I think it
Thank
could
you.
help people educate themselves about Italian rugby, So, yeah, really good. Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Best of luck to Italy.
To you
Not
too.
too much though in the Six Nations because there is a basement bout now between us and Wales. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
And best of luck to the Italian pro teams going forward this season.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on.
There you go. That was Mike from the Fratelli the Rugby Pod. Okay, just a quick bit of news then. So Dragons have brought back Aki Salui as short-term cover to help ease their loose head prop injury crisis. Rodri Jones, Josh Reynolds, Dylan Keller-Griffiths and Jordan Morris are all currently injured, which means that Rodrigo Martinez was the only fit loose head on the books, with Cameron Jones being brought in from Ospreys on loan to act as cover. So the 31-year-old has returned to Rodney Parade until January, where he's going to be heading for America. He's going to Utah Warriors in Major League Rugby. Another former Dragon heading to America. The list is building up quite a lot now, isn't it? So, yeah, good to see Aki back. Let's see how he goes. Hopefully, he won't concede too many penalties. But yeah, he's very good in the loose and he's very popular in the changing room. He's popular with the coaches and players. So let's see how he gets on. But yeah, the worry over Lucid has been eased somewhat by Aki coming back. And then the other bit of news then, the Dragons All-Stars won 24-5 over Stafford at Eugene Cross Park in Ebbw to make it 12 wins on the bounce. The All-Stars return to action this Saturday at Ebbw, another Anglo-Welsh fixture against Bolton. The kickoff is 2:30 p.m. as the All-Stars go for 13 games in a row winning. They are undefeated in 2024. So, yep, fair play to the All-Stars. It's nice to see a Dragons team actually winning, isn't it? So, yeah, best of luck to them on Saturday. Okay, so the Dragons' next game then, round 6, Connacht away, 7:35 p.m. kickoff. The game is live on S4C and Premier Sports. A little bit of early team news here. So Aaron Wainwright is set to return for the Dragons, which is a huge boost for us and Wales. Also, hooker James Benjamin, friend of the pod, Jumbo, and fullback Kai Evans could also be available for selection. We'll probably see Aki Salui back for this one as well, I would have thought. So yeah, hopefully we're getting some bodies back and we haven't picked up any more injuries, because let's be honest, we could do without some more injuries, can we? Our injury list has been off the charts, as the same as Ospreys, but hopefully we are easing the injury list somewhat. So it's going to be a tough trip to Connacht. The last time Dragons won out in Connacht was 2021. Dean Ryan was the coach. It's a very tough trip. Connacht just come off the back of a comprehensive defeat, and Leinster losing 33-12. It's going to be very tough for the Dragons, but I actually think this is a winnable game. I don't think this is mission impossible. I think they can go there and get a result, but they are going to have to be clinical and they have to stop making mistakes. And they've got to go there with a positive mindset. And it's difficult at the moment. I understand the fans' frustration. It's just one win. But I still maintain, and I'll keep saying this, people may disagree with me, but I still think we are a better team than we were last year. We are more competitive. Our defense is better. Our physicality has increased. We do look a far better team, but we're just not getting the results. And unfortunately, this is a results-based business, so we need to see some results pretty soon. Otherwise, it's just going to end up like last season, where we're stuck in our losing rut. And once, as we all know, when Dragons are in our losing rut, it's very, very hard to get out of it. So best of luck to the boys out in Connacht on Saturday. What's my prediction? I do think Connacht will win this one. They are very good at home, aren't they, Connacht? They are a very good team. My prediction is Connacht 7 to 10 points, somewhere in that margin. But like I said, it wouldn't be a shock or surprise if Dragons win out there. We can win out there. It is a winnable game, but it's going to take some effort, I think, to get a result out there. Because like I said, Connacht are no mugs. They're very, very tough to beat at home. And Galway, as we know, with the weather, it's just a hard place to go. But we'll have to see what happens there. And we really could do with a win to end what's been a really tough block of fixtures so far. So, yeah, onwards and upwards we go on to Saturday. And that's about it, I think, for this podcast. Thank you for listening. And thank you to Riverside Sports Bar for supporting us. And thank you to our listeners. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a kind review from wherever you get your podcasts from so you don't miss an episode. So we're going to be back next week, hopefully, with a special guest, fingers crossed. But until then, take care and goodbye.
That was the Dragon's Lair in association with the Riverside Sports Bar Newport, an American-style bar with a proper Welsh feel.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.